Have we all lived in a past life?
I encountered 26 lives myself.
I had one woman felt that she was there at the Jesus crucifixion.
Could our current lives actually be reincarnations of a previous existence?
He could remember thousands of incarnations.
What if you previously lived the life of a famous person?
There's no way I can prove anything, but at the same time, I gave detailed information that I wouldn't normally have.
I was Cleopatra. Oh, I was Cleopatra. I was Cleopatra.
Reincarnation and past life regression, paranormal occurrences, realities we don't understand, or elaborate hoaxes by people wishing they were someone else. Either way, it's unexplained. People have dreams and fantasies. But imagine if you were able to tell what had happened to you in a previous existence, and what if that existence was that of a famous person?
To experience a past life and to learn from it is not something to be afraid of.
Imagine you had lived the life of a movie star like James Dean, or a 1930s screen goddess like Jean Harlow, which Valerie Franich believes she did.
There's no way I can prove anything, but at the same time, I give detailed information about, a house, places that have been, that I'd never been to.
Is it possible that we were previously someone else?
Everyone reincarnates, including galaxies. As a matter of fact, Stephen Hawking said that galaxies die and are revived again. Even the plants, the leaves are falling, and then comes winter, a period of conservation, and then it's again spring, and life springs again, right? So we're not different as people.
Could we really become someone else when we die?
It seems random, but it's actually not as random as you might think. Energy cannot die. It's the law of conservation of energy. Energy cannot die. The energy of us, which as a nurse I've measured EEGs, EKGs, which is heart and brain and organs, we can measure all that energy. So it exists. And so when we die, where does the energy go? If you think of the energy going off, our body has physical DNA, but now we have a soul DNA. We have experiences and remembrances that our soul, our energy is carrying.
Belief in reincarnation is not as rare as we might think.
3/4 of the population believe in reincarnation. Jesus believed in that, and you'll find it in the New Testament, you find it in the Old Testament. So I guess it's not something new.
To define reincarnation, it's a doctrine of a cyclic existence. In other words, rather than a linear existence, which has a beginning and an end, and perhaps a move on to an afterlife or simply an end, this existence is cyclic.
Reincarnation is in fact central to some religions.
It's a central tenet of Hinduism, most definitely. Also, it is a central tenet of Buddhism, of Jainism, and also Sikhism.
Buddhism teaches the concept of samsara, a beginningless, constant cycle of rebirth, life, and death. Liberation from this is only possible when one attains nirvana.
The whole purpose, really, of Hindu and Buddhist spiritual life is to break that cycle, because samsara is a cycle of suffering.
Say in life we messed up. Say we did something wrong. Say we were evil and never learned why we were evil, or never redeemed ourselves in that. That will hold in our soul DNA. Then, when we merge in and incarnate again, that is now part of our physical body. So now we get the opportunity to sort it out this time.
People come back in all shapes and forms, depending on their karma.
I personally say that I encountered 26 lives myself.
The Buddha himself, when he was enlightened, said that he could remember thousands of incarnations.
It's based on what your soul has decided it wants to experience. So we can skip all sorts of things and go back to the 1500s or the 1400s. We have had a couple cavemen experiences I have when I've done regressions. So it's probably more random than not.
The self can come back in a lower system of life or in a higher state of life, depending really on the karma that has been accumulated. So if it's bad karma, the state of life will be lower, will be more difficult. If it's good karma, then we get pushed on up into a higher state of life.
Past lives and reincarnation appear to manifest most predominantly in the lives of the famous.
So the belief in past life is actually very common among celebrities. For instance, Dolly claimed to be St. John. Phil Collins also said that he had died at the Alamo. And of course, General Patton thought that he was a Roman soldier, and Stevie Nicks thought that she was a medieval monk.
I've actually had somebody, we did a regression, and they were some little tiny mole thing in the ground. I had one woman felt that she was there at Jesus' crucifixion. A lot of people will have past life recollections in dreams. That deja vu, when we've had an experience and we think we've had it already before.
People that you recognize, like I know you, I saw you before. And that's because you saw that person in a previous life.
But others say memories cannot be so black and white.
Memories are what are available to us in order to recall what we've been through in life. So they provide a reservoir of experiences that we have as reference points, things that we've learned from, mistakes that we've made, what to do more of in the future, what to do less of perhaps in the future too. And memory creates a tapestry of experiences. So it's important that we do rely on it. It's usually quite reliable, but it does have holes, and it is possible for us to fail to recall certain things that did happen, and also recall things that didn't happen, or be influenced to remember things a certain way, in a way that might not accurately represent the facts.
To help retrieve the memories, there is a technique used to bring people back to their past lives. It's known as past life regression.
Past life regression can be done under deep hypnosis. It can be done in a state of meditation, through dreaming. Sometimes people get spontaneous flashbacks, like a deja vu. Having people go regressively into their childhood here in this life, and then from there, you go into a past life. It brings people to a point when they are so attuned into their subconscious mind, where the memories are stored in the form of picture word clusters, and they reproduce them as if it's happening right now and here.
I was feeling all kinds of things in my body. I felt like I was running. I felt like I was jumping up and down. And so it was like I was a maid in this 1500 pub, and I was running up and down the stairs trying to take care of everything and everybody. So that was my first, quote, experience with past life regression.
In another regression session, Mary Anderson discovered she was connected to the ancient hill of Tara in Ireland.
I was a child who was trying to help the hostages that were in the mound of hostages on the hill of Tara. There was regal people, king, queen, and I was in the same robe. So I was a royal child but I knew I was trying to help these people. And I actually remember in the dream, in the meditation, I was going off to run away to go get something to help these people so they wouldn't get killed.
So how realistic is it that anybody could have lived the life of someone else? The life of someone who was world famous. Is it possible that people are born with memories that they lived in the past lives of famous individuals? Time after time, people claim to have experiences which seem to prove that they actually witnessed events of the past or may actually have lived a previous life of a well-known figure. Valerie Franich began to believe she had lived the life of a well-known movie star who had become world famous in the 1930s.
I always had a love for Hollywood, and I always liked coming to Los Angeles, and I always loved being around that kind of old Hollywood, old world.
During one of Valerie's visits to Los Angeles in the mid-1960s, she began to get a familiar feeling in places that had a strong association with one of Hollywood's most famous screen legends.
We would drive around and we would look, I said, that house feels really familiar to me. And then we'd drive around some more and I'd say, that house feels really familiar to me also, and that house does too. We didn't have Google, we didn't have Zillow, we didn't have all those things that people now, you could do in 10 minutes to find out who lived there and the history of a house. But all those 3 houses that we checked out when we were driving around all had a connection to where Jean Harlow once lived. So we thought that was interesting.
A contemporary of Clark Gable and James Cagney in Hollywood, Harlow was known as the Blonde Bombshell.
Jean Harlow was the first bomb blonde shell, and she was as big as Joan Crawford in her day. And she was also known as a sex symbol in the golden age of Hollywood.
Sadly, her colorful career came to an abrupt end in 1937 when she died of an illness which was never fully explained. Valerie felt such a strong connection to Jean Harlow, she was compelled to dig deeper, leading her to a prominent expert in past life regression.
I'm a psychiatrist here on the West Coast that is probably one of the first, if not the first pioneer in research of past life regression therapy. Being an expert in inducing hypnosis very fast, within a fraction of a second I put somebody in a deep trance. It's actual, it's happening in real time and person and place. It cannot be something more precise than that.
Valerie's first session was a success.
He's very, very skilled at being able to put people under very fast, and I didn't know what to expect. I think if you look at it, like if you're in another room close by, outside or something, and you hear other people talking, you pick up maybe several words that they're saying, but not everything. That's how it was, and I heard Dr. Finkelstein talking with would be, I think, this, spirit of Jean Harlow, just talking back and forth.
Dr. Finkelstein was convinced Valerie had indeed been Jean Harlow in a past life, but he wanted to prove it further.
Besides the hypnotic past life regression, I used other tools, biometric measurements, and that may include facial recognition that you have now in cell phones. Proved to my satisfaction, especially with the FBI facial recognition, Valerie, with a margin of error, is Jean Harlow reincarnated.
In another regression session, they would discover something that would shock them both. Valerie realized she had known Dr. Finkelstein in her past life.
Well, it was through an actual regression session. Apparently, I said to him, "You're Paul Byrne. You're Paul Byrne."
She said, "You're Paul Byrne." And I said, "What? I'm not. What are you talking about?"
So just who was Paul Byrne?
Paul Byrne and Jean Harlow met at a big premiere, and he was a big executive for MGM, and he really helped her career. They had this whirlwind romance, and they eventually got married.
It took me 2-3 months until I accepted that, and I started researching that, but not myself, because now I could be biased. So I hired 2 experts in past life hypnotic regression. They put us both, Valerie and I, under hypnosis in the same place, and we talked as Jean Harlow and Paul Byrne.
Could this all really be true? Or was hypnosis manipulating the pair into believing something false?
Hypnosis is topical at times for being a method to elicit forgotten memories, often memories that go way back into our past, even to a time of life where it's almost impossible for us to retain conscious information. Hypnosis is a method that's conducive to creating the right conditions that can increase the risk of false memories or the false memory phenomenon occurring. Between, it's believed, 15 to 25% of the population is more suggestible than the remainder of the population. So people might be far more persuadable or susceptible to things being suggested to them, which can impact on the way they recall certain events and experiences in life.
But Valerie and Adrian remain firm believers that they were the iconic Hollywood couple in a previous life, and a discovery during another regression could prove it definitively.
As a matter of fact, I didn't remember it that I was Paul Byrne because, I was shot in the head and I couldn't remember. When you get a trauma like that, you have amnesia.
In 1932, just 2 months after he married Jean Harlow, Paul Byrne was found shot dead in an incident believed to be suicide, but never fully explained. Numerous theories developed around Byrne's death.
He died from a single gunshot wound to the head, and it was quite mysterious. Initially, it was thought that he had died from suicide, and there was a note that was found, but many people suspected that this might have been a cover-up by MGM. MGM actually went to the house and arrived 2 hours before the police arrived, so that meant they could have potentially staged his death. The case was actually reopened in 1960, but there was lack of evidence, so it was closed, and it was ruled that he had died of suicide.
But Valerie realized during a regression session into her past life as Jean Harlow that Byrne was murdered, and the killer was his ex-wife, Dorothy Millette.
That is the story that came about through the regression. For me, I didn't come in with some psychological problems or something, so I came in with an open mind to understand that I helped resolve a killing, a murder that was not a suicide, it was an actual death through murder. There's no way I can prove anything, but at the same time, I gave detailed information that I wouldn't normally have.
Could it be true?
Some people like to debate that, but I don't think it's really a positive thing. Either you do believe it or you don't.
Unfortunately, there are not precise mathematical ways of proving that. For those who believe, no explanation is possible, and for those who don't, no explanation is possible.
How likely is it that we can really live multiple lives and even remember these past lives? Is there some reality to all of these theories, or is it simply something unexplainable?
Memory is, for the most part, a very reliable function of our brains, and if it wasn't, it probably wouldn't exist. There is nothing better. So, for the most part, it's important that we do rely on it.
I predict that as the time goes by, more and more people will believe in reincarnation. If my colleagues, the doctors, that are so skeptical, they started believing in that, and they are calling me, and they are referring to me people. The value of it as a doctor is that when you discover the mistakes you made in the past, you are bound not to repeat them again, and you have a more successful, happy life. But not only that, is instantaneously you feel more open, more loving, more human, less afraid. You have more courage. You know that there's no the end.
A lot of people, when they think of reincarnation, you're supposed to get to know who you were and then forget about those souls. And for me, it's always kind of like more of an incorporated thing. I think it's just, a part of who a person is.
We tend to think of memory as being like a video recorder. So it records everything that we encounter over the course of our day-to-day life. When that's actually not quite true, it's more akin to something that pieces events together, constructs a narrative, or indeed it can be reconstructed by subsequent learning or subsequent recall, or people telling us things or suggesting certain things to us. So when it operates like that, it's a little bit like a Wikipedia page. It can be edited at a later date, and as such, sometimes what's written on the pages of our memory is not necessarily everything that actually happened.
I'll be very honest, I don't know. I don't have a solid belief. In fact, when I teach, I tell everybody, I'm not here to prove a thing to you. I'm here to help you. And this is how we're going to do it. But it's some of the things that I get, I think we could even say maybe just analogies versus an actual life. But that's left to be seen. If it helps the client, that's what we do.
Life is beautiful. And this is what you learn more and more as you go through many lives and you explore them.